You built a product. You went on the Shark Tank, pitched a product, and then you built that business into a $12.5 million business in top line revenue. Then you saw the changes that were happening with relation to our trade standing with China. And you were like, e-commerce, consumer-facing products have no idea what's about to hit them. Why aren't we onshoring? Why aren't we reshoring? Nobody's manufacturing silicone. You started looking around, there was nobody who was doing it. And so you decided, I'm going to start a manufacturing company in California, of all places, to re-onshore silicone. What I have to ask you first is, do you ever get tired?
It's a lot. You could say that this is my last move. This is make or break.
Hans, I'm really excited to introduce everybody to you because you're a real deal entrepreneur. You built a product business. You went on the Shark Tank, pitched a product, and then you built that business into a $12.5 million business in top line revenue. And then you saw what was coming down the pipe. You saw the changes that were happening with relation to our trade standing with China. And you were like, e-commerce, consumer-facing products have no idea what's about to hit them. Why aren't we onshoring? Why aren't we reshoring? Nobody's manufacturing silicone, which is an integral product in every single one of our retail products. And you started looking around, there was nobody who was doing it. And so you decided, I'm going to start a manufacturing company in California, of all places, to re-onshore silicone, which, like, just all of those moves in a row are incredible adventures. But I think what I have to ask you first is, do you ever get tired?
Yeah, and I have 2 babies, so I get extra tired. Yes, it's a lot.
In the introduction of you, was there anything I missed in there, high level?
You could say that this is my last move. Like, you could lose it all. I don't know. I think it grabs the attention a little bit more to be like, this is make or break. Yeah, I don't know. Up to you, though.
I had Craig Fuller on here, and it's such a massive shift in our international relationships, commerce relationships, especially with China, where we've built everything for cheap for so long. And then now we're like reshoring, onshoring. And obviously you saw a hole in the marketplace where you're like, okay, they manufacture silicone here, but not for retail products. Like, why is nobody doing this? I know you like looked around and pinched yourself a couple times because you were like, am I the idiot here? But like, nobody else is doing this in the United States.
There was one company that would do it that I finally found, but the pricing was high and they're getting inundated with everyone trying to onshore. And when I actually looked at the process of what it is, it's super simple. It's basically like a waffle maker that squishes the material and keeps it hot for like a minute, and then the product's done. It vulcanizes. I just found that all the manufacturers in the US that are producing silicone parts are large-scale industrial contract manufacturers that are making like gaskets and seals and things for medical, pharmaceutical, aerospace, defense, like all these big multi-million unit per year, very predictable things and manufacturers. And the issue here in the US is no one will take these small run, ever-changing consumer products are changed by quarter. So it's very fast paced and you need to be versatile, and just no one in the US is taking that on.
So I had Dan Thompson on. He owns a silicone manufacturing facility, but they're all like, he does 75 million units a year, I think. So that's what you were saying. Like, they're doing commercial.
Massive commercial, industrial. Yep.
Let's back up and educate people who are listening right now. Before we hopped on here, I was like, okay, silicon manufacturing. Yep, silicon. And you're like, it's silicone, dummy. Silicon and silicone are different. So will you explain really quickly what the freak is silicone?
Yep.
Why is it so important for e-commerce and consumer-facing products?
Yeah. So silicone actually comes from silica, which is ground up quartzite mixed with, goes through this process with like charcoal burning, and it's the whole thing. And then it makes silicon or silica, and then you can either make silicone or silicon with that. So silicone are items that you see that are like squishy, rubbery feeling. So like things like pacifiers to menstrual cups to windshield wipers. There's a lot of items that are silicone, and then silicon are things in computer chips and solar panels, stuff like that. So silicone is that squishy, rubbery type thing. The benefits of silicone is it doesn't break down. So it doesn't produce like microplastics, and it's totally inert. And it's not poisonous like oil-based plastic products and rubbers are. So there's a lot of benefits to silicone and super high heat resistance, all kinds of crazy properties that silicone.
Here's some of the stuff that I was looking up. So it's durable and lasts a long time. Like you were saying, it doesn't break down. It's flexible and versatile. So like you were saying, you can heat it up and put it into the waffle maker. And you said vulcanize it?
Yeah. So vulcanizing is a process that makes all the atoms link together the right way so that it stays in that form. Yeah.
Yeah. My brain is just like, you make hot, then make new form.
You make hot,
okay, anyways,
stay shape. Yeah.
So it's flexible, it's versatile. Like you said, it's non-toxic.
Yep.
Which is a big deal right now. Temperature resistant, waterproof, weatherproof, sustainable, which I thought was interesting. It's more environmentally friendly than other plastics, and it's easy to manufacture. So, and the things that you were saying, I'm going to read this list that I saw pumped out. It's like things you don't even think of. Kitchenware, personal care, baby products, toys, phone cases, chargers and cables, wearable devices, keypads, medical tubing, implants, surgical tools, seals and gaskets, dashboard materials, wiper blades, sealants, insulation, stretch fabrics, waterproofing, mold making, lubricants and greases, food storage, baby food, gloves, wound care, seals and insulators, arts and craft, and furniture.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more than that too, right? Like, but basically, if you're selling any consumer product, in your category, there is some form of a silicone product of that, or a product that uses silicone. So if you're an e-commerce manufacturer and you're deciding, hey, I'm going to make this in China because it's cheaper and I'm going to import it to the United States, those are low margin businesses, right? Like you were telling me on $12.5 million in top line revenue for your product, you were making like $1 million or less in net income. So it's low margin. It's a volume game, right? And if all of a sudden the price that you're paying for that goes from 0 to 145%, because the tariffs are in effect, you've got to figure out how you're going to manufacture that at a level that makes it actually affordable, because your margin's just gone at that point. I think that's the problem set that people are facing. You're very interesting because you had a silicone product that you created. What's it called?
Tenikle. Bendable legs and suction cups like an octopus. So it mounts phones, cameras, tablets, anything, anywhere. I'm really good at that pitch now because I've done it so many times.
Tenikle. We really suck.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're the suckiest brand you'll ever meet, and you'll love it.
Yeah. We've had some ads run like that.
You created it and then you went on Shark Tank and pitched it?
Yep. Got to deal with Damon John.
Damon's my favorite.
Yeah, he's my favorite too. I went in wanting a deal with Damon and I walked out with a deal with Damon. It was awesome.
Oh my gosh, I'm so pissed right now because I'm like, is this going to be a 3-hour episode? Oh shoot, I have to pull up the thread.
Okay.
The product. Did you have the product specced out when you went on to Shark Tank?
Or yeah, we were already selling.
The idea?
I'd already done like 1.4 million in sales at that point or something.
Okay, so what year is this?
This is 2021.
2021. You've got the product. You've done $1.5 million in sales. You go on to Shark Tank.
Yep.
Why did you go to Shark Tank?
Few reasons. One, I ran out of money. I needed money. So that was one reason. Low margin business. Ads are expensive. I didn't want to get more debt, that sort of thing. So I went on Shark Tank. Number two, Shark Tank is an ad. You get people's attention for 12 minutes long and you get to talk about your story and your products and do all that. So, I really tried to treat it like just have a good time and make good TV, and whatever happens, happens. But yeah.
Did they take a percentage? I have never talked to somebody who did, but I read somewhere that Shark Tank takes a percentage of your business, whether or not you get a deal.
Yeah, the first 2 seasons they were doing that, and then Mark Cuban came in and apparently was like, no, this has to stop. So Mark Cuban was the one, from what I heard, that stopped ABC from taking a percentage of these brands. But the Sharks do. I mean, they're actual investors. Of course. It's a real process. You go through due diligence, anything like any other deal, and it is real. So,
okay, so you pitched to Damon. What did you pitch to Damon? How much for what percentage?
Yeah, I pitched $200K for 10%. So throwing it at a $2 million valuation. The Sharks don't like when people come in with some wild valuation. It's just kind of ridiculous. So trying to be realistic. On the show, ended up getting not that deal. I totally opened the kimono. It was just here's all the problems with my business. And I think it made for good TV and it played well, but it certainly hurt my valuation there. But then, things kind of progressed in the due diligence process and they realized, oh, this is a good business. And it kind of changed a little bit for my benefit, but I don't know if I'm allowed to.
Okay. So you went in 200,000 at 2 million. Can you tell me what you ended?
100K, and I own almost 90% at this point. So a little bit better of a deal.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, much better of a deal. Are you still, you and Damon have a good relationship?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Last year, I sponsored a NASCAR driver and had him come out, and we hung out the whole day I think it was November last year. And he was the announcer for the get ready to start your engines. It was so fun. It was a blast. But yeah, we've had some time together, certainly. And we talked here or there.
How long was it between filming and when it aired?
Ooh, that was like 6 months. It was a brutal 6 months because I was kind of stuck.
Because that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Was that like the calm before the storm? Were you just like, is this going to happen? Like, are we actually going to?
You know what? I'm going to get vulnerable here. I totally fell into a depression because I was like, I don't know what's happening. I don't, the deal isn't done until it even airs. That sort of happens too, because you don't know if you're even going to air. You film and you don't know what's going to happen after that. You may not air. They may not show your episode ever.
Hey, I don't know if you remember this, but when we started this podcast, we entered into a social contract. I would spend time, energy, and money producing this podcast, interviewing these individuals and giving you insights into how to build, buy, start, grow your business. And you would like, subscribe, and leave me a 5-star review. Now, out of that, we both get to talk to really cool people and hear really cool insights. We both get a ton of value. But I just want to help you keep your word. So would you do me a favor? Will you go leave a 5-star review for me on Apple or Spotify? It would really help. And if you want, even share this with a friend. Damon shakes your hand at the end of the episode and he's like, we got a deal. That deal may not happen unless it airs.
Sometimes, and not only because it airs. I think that's one of the factors that they would prefer that it airs because that's going to be a big boost. We didn't actually finalize until after it aired.
You kind of fell into a depression because you needed the money. That's why you went on to Shark Tank.
Yeah, I needed it. It was gnarly. And I was working odd jobs on the side, just trying to like keep things going.
Like what?
I was doing a home design for like backyards and home remodels. It was like playing Sims all day. It was really fun. You got to design all these crazy things. I worked for this company. I learned a lot about like sales funnels and stuff because I got to help build up their business, and it was cool.
For 6 months, you were just like piecemealing it. You're like, I hope this airs. Did you have any idea of like, is it going to air? Is it not going to air? Or were you literally just up in the air until?
Just hope and prayers and knowing that I did my best. And I felt really good coming out of it, that I was like, there's no way that this doesn't air. And I fought for my spot too. Because I live local, it was like, oh, you may not actually air. You may not actually be able to pitch because you're local, and you might have to just come in as an alternate, that sort of deal. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. But I fought for my spot, got my spot, did the whole thing. It was like full Hail Mary mode for me. It's just, I needed something good to happen out of it and
make it happen mode.
It was a very crazy time, and I'm super grateful for it. My wife and I moved into an RV during that period too. Like from trying to get on the show to actually like going on the show is when all the ads stopped working, all these problems started happening and things started to go south. And so from the time that I was like submitting to get on the show to the time I actually like walked out into the tank, things had gone from like, oh yeah, this is a decent business to, oh crap, I really need this. Let's go.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it was just one of those moments. I mean, it's such a risky industry.
And then it was 6 months. And then it was 6 months from that point.
And then it was 6 months from that point until it actually aired. I mean, I was still running the business and I still had receivables coming in, and things were kind of going.
Give me an idea. Okay, so how big was the business at that time? A month?
So prior to actually airing, I think we're doing like 30, 60 grand a month. And then the months leading up to airing, like the last two, we were down to like, I think it was like 5 or 10 grand a month, like next to nothing.
Oh my gosh. Well, and your margin on that was less than 10%.
Yeah,
so you're like,
no, I wasn't making anything from it. It was just,
you weren't making any money.
Keep the dream alive, stay in the game as long as possible. That's always been the thing.
Would you have shut it down if you didn't have the Shark Tank potentially airing?
I don't think so. I don't know. I feel like I always find a way, but I knew I was banking on that. And that was the thing. At that time, I was banking on that, and nothing else really mattered. And I just believed that it was going to air because I did as much as I possibly could to make it the best possible. And if you watch the episode, it is a good episode.
I can't wait to hear the punchline of this, but I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm intentionally just teasing it out.
Okay.
So before it aired, you got down to $10,000 a month. Were you in due diligence with Damon at this point?
Yes. Not before it airs. Oh, wait. Yeah. I'm
Okay.
sorry. Before we filmed, that's where I was at. I think after we filmed, it was starting to creep back up a little bit. It wasn't much though. But yeah, those are the numbers we were getting during that period. Yeah.
Okay. So pre-filming, you were there. Where did you think it was going to go after it aired? Like, what was your hope that it would get to after it aired? Obviously, you're like, $1 million a month would be amazing. But then you're like, okay, more realistically, if I can get to this spot, I'd be happy.
You're going to laugh. My 3-year goal was to get it up to 5 million a year. We're now 3 years later at 12.5 million. So it went way better than I thought. I mean, Shark Tank certainly helped, but that's only a spike during that period. And I was really fortunate. Part of the reason why I ran out of cash is because I bought all this inventory. So I was really fortunate that I had the inventory ready to turn. And when that airing hit, like we sold out in 2 or 3 days.
That was,
it was awesome. Oh, I'm sorry.
That was going to be.
Really
no, don't apologize. It's your freaking story.
So
I was so curious about that.
And their teams actually told me that was one of the better sales results in recent years compared to like the earlier days of Shark Tank when that would happen frequently.
So if you were doing 30 grand a month, you're doing 30 grand a month, you got a bunch of inventory, and then Shark Tank airs. What did you do in that first month, second month, third? Like when did the spike hit?
Aired in December, which was the perfect timing. It was like December 17th, right before the holidays. It was awesome. I think that month we did like 640K or something like that, like just in that month. This business, honestly.
And just in that 2 weeks probably, right?
Like, yeah. It was about a 2-week period that we did all that. I think that was the number.
Whoa.
600 something K. Yeah, it was awesome. It was like, oh, nice. We're a real business now. Let's go. And then it's like, okay, now what? Like right after that, you have to keep some momentum going. So really just lean hard into it. Started pitching to retail, which has been difficult.
Is that the product behind you, by the way?
Yeah, actually it is. Here it is packaged.
Yeah, sure.
I just had a meeting before this with one of our distributors. So my packaging happens to be here. I wasn't planning this, but
so
yeah,
awesome.
This is it.
So, will you grab the one you have out? I want to see it.
Yeah. So
I know it's a light.
This is the fun part about this brand is made the platform, which is the Tenikle. It's mount stuff anywhere. So the next move was let's make the stuff it can mount. So not just phones and cameras, but let's do lights and fans and speakers and all kinds of things that we can mount anywhere. Yeah. So it bends, it wraps, it suctions.
Those were the things you had in inventory. You didn't have the lights and all that other stuff.
No. Yeah. This is all I had in inventory.
Yeah.
Yep.
Month one, or really first 2 weeks, 640,000. What did you do in January then? Do you remember?
Oh, it dropped. I mean, January's always drop. I think that January, especially because we had sold out, we were back down to like just scraps. It was like leftover stuff. So down to scraps, like 10K a month or 5K a month.
But it was because you sold out?
Yeah, it was because we sold out. Not only because we sold out. So usually Q1 to Q2 are pretty rough months for this business. Mainly because it's hard to sell bulk to individuals for a product. People really only need 1, maybe 2 or 3 at the very most. But when the holidays come around, we crank on like 10 packs, 12 packs, like stocking stuff for this. And so like last year, that 12.5 million, I think we did 8 of it in Q4, like a little over 8.
Holy crap.
Yeah, it's a very
stressful business.
Yeah, so it goes womp, 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 womp. It's such a roller coaster. So partly why I want to open this factory is, deseasonalize things a bit. It's just most consumer items that are non-essentials tend to go through cycles like that. Or if it's like a pool floaty business, you're going to do most of that in summer.
So tell me about the unit economics, the mount that you had. What does that typically cost you and what are you selling it for?
Went into Shark Tank, that cost me $6 to make and I was selling it for 45-ish. Perceived value, I mean, it's a really handy product. It's all your mounts in one. It's a great, so perceived value is pretty high. Our average selling price now is in the low 30s range, high 20s range, depending on the season. So unit economics now, back on Shark Tank, it was $6. We now have it landed about 465 per unit, and our average selling price being high 20s, low 30s.
I don't get it. Why? What? Then why is your net margin less than 10%?
Facebook ads. It's ads. To get that
Oh,
volume,
really?
you got to crank marketing up all the time. And that's where most of the money goes, is to advertising. I think last year we spent like $4.5 million in ads. It's a lot of money going to Zuck. It's crazy.
How many units did you sell last year?
A little over 300,000 units last year.
So 300,000 units, $4.5 million in spend is, what is that? $12 a unit?
About 12 a unit, yeah.
Dude, wow. More than double your cost of production is your cost to acquire a customer.
100%. The only company that's really made that much off of this is Meta. They have raked it in. I always laugh. Like, I'll see like a watch that Zuck's wearing or something. I'm just like, I paid for that.
You see that right there, that screw on the band? I paid for that screw. That's insane, dude.
Yeah.
Because you explain the unit economics, it's like, oh, we charge $35 and it costs us $4. Like, oh, dude, let's do that all day.
But to sell a lot of them, I had to make the market for this. People don't know that they need a flexible octopus mount to mount their phone anywhere. You got to shout from the hilltop and make it known. And the easiest way to do that at scale is ads, running marketing. I mean, you got to think what Hexclad spends per year on their marketing dollar. It's nuts. So it's the Gordon Ramsay kitchenware things, Hexclad. Okay. It's a big one. There's a bunch of big e-commerce companies that's how they built their brands up, is purely through performance.
So you've been doing this for a number of years. You manufacture this in China. You've gotten it to a point where it's like, all right, $4 a unit. You've got really clean unit economics. And now, because it's a low margin business, you've got to have volume. And then all of a sudden when the tariffs come in, or at least they're being talked about, you're like, how do we make this work? And really, for the last several years, the government and executives within industry, they've been preaching to executives, get out of China.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just the tariffs. It wasn't just, oh, Trump's going to come in here and raise tariffs. It was also, they may attack Taiwan. We never know what geopolitical risks there might be. You're overexposed in China. And so people have been looking at outsourcing outside of China. One of the things that I found very interesting is I've heard many people say China's not where you go to make stuff cheaply anymore. Like, it's not like the labor's way cheaper. It's where you go because they've got the manufacturing expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big problem that the US is facing that we've slowly not realized. I think manufacturing is pretty unsexy. Like, smart people want to go into tech. They want to build a SaaS business. They want to do all that. But, how many SaaS businesses can you have when there's no brands to actually pay for the SaaS company? Like, it really comes down to bits here, and the bits being the items that are on shelves that people consume.
Did we as the United States just outsourced all of our manufacturing know-how and capacity to China over the years because it was so much cheaper and now there's nothing locally? Or do we have it locally, we just don't know how to scale the infrastructure?
I think it's more, we have the technical knowledge locally. We don't have the infrastructure to build it up. It's a broad problem. Machinery here in the US. So for the factory I'm starting, all I need is like a 200-ton press, and I'll get multiple of these. That same 200-ton press in the US costs, $100,000 to $300,000 made in USA. That exact same spec'd out everything overseas, same quality, same everything, about $8,000. So the difference just in the machinery alone kind of starts to really change things. And then I think the field itself has sort of skipped a generation. There's just not enough people doing it. And with this new sort of manufacturing renaissance with the tariffs and everything, as much as they're painful to go through, they could end up being a positive thing in the long run if more people just build startups to make things.
Can you describe how manufacturing facilities work right now?
Yeah. So in the US, most factories are set up for those long-term, large-scale contract manufacturing, where they bid on a contract with a company like Volkswagen or whatever. We'll make this component and we'll charge you this much. Okay, great. You have it. Here's your 5-year contract to do that. And then they build out everything for that one component or however many components that they're making. It's very deal driven, long-term, predictable. That's great. But when it comes
high volume, large dollar contracts,
you're making
predictability,
the same thing millions of times. What China did really well is they created a lot of small, they were very entrepreneurial and created small scale, super efficient factories that will take those low minimum order quantities of like, we'll do 3,000 units for you. Here's the price. And they just hustled it out and just like took as much business as they possibly could. And eventually consumer brands in the US just got used to working with China because they'll hustle it out and get decent costing for things that are, lower minimum order quantities. While I think the US just got used to larger runs of the same thing and maybe got complacent on, I don't want to do all that. And it feels like it skipped a generation. And I think that's why brands are just so used to producing overseas, because they were able to really optimize for that small scale stuff.
If I'm a large $100 million plus brand and I'm doing it high volume, I might onshore. I might be doing some domestic manufacturing because it's high volume, high dollar amount, predictable, et cetera. But for many of these companies that are e-commerce brands that are white labeling, drop shippers, just anybody who's a small business that's selling a product, they would be outsourcing that to China, because what you're saying is China's effectively figured out how to efficiently create these smaller runs without having to, invest a massive amount in the infrastructure.
Right. With the infrastructure being in place. I think if a massive brand wanted to move all their manufacturing here in the US, they'd have to build out an entire setup.
The thing that you said to me on our pre-call and like just blew me away is you were like, basically we've got to copy China.
Yeah.
And bring what they're doing here to the United States. And it was like, whoa. I'm always hearing about, China's copying us and they're stealing our IP. What you're saying is the opposite of that.
Yeah, we need to steal China. China's strategy, essentially. Yeah. So it's funny. That's my plan with this factory startup, is steal the playbook of small scale, just get a few rudimentary machines that produce the parts efficiently in a small shop, get it running and going, scale it from there. And that's what they've been doing. Like the factory that produces my products, that's what they are. They're a small warehouse. They have just a few of the machines that they need to produce for me and a few other brands. And they crank and they do, good work, and they're fine with smaller minimum order quantities. So, my thought is, if we're going to compete on the global scale in manufacturing, we have to kind of copy that playbook. We can't just be doing massive factories everywhere. It needs to be small scale satellite operations. Yeah.
Here's my question. Like, you're doing a ton in sales with your other company. Why didn't you just look at the way that everybody else is doing it and think, I'll nearshore it. I'll do it in Mexico, or I'll do it in Central America, or I'll go to Vietnam or one of these other countries. Like, it seems like everybody else would have priced us out and said like, oh, we could bring it back to the United States, or we could do these other places. So the smart money is going elsewhere. Like, what do you see that they're not?
Well, it's twofold. Number one, I love a good opportunity, and I see this as an opportunity. I know a few other brands in the space that were struggling. I made a post that I'm planning on doing this, and boom, right out the gate, this company could be doing more in revenue than my other companies. So number one, opportunity. Number two was, so I have molds in Mexico. It's been difficult to kind of keep the process going. They just don't move as fast. And looking at Vietnam, looking at these other countries, it doesn't change the geopolitical uncertainty that's happening in the space. Taiwan and China might break out. What happens to all the freight that's like, US has to pick a side? Maybe they embargo all the ships going across the Pacific, and then now everyone's screwed. Doesn't matter where in South Asia or South Pacific you're or that region that you're shipping from. And then Central America and all that, it's starting to feel like everyone is going there, and there's only so much infrastructure and only so much in place that can accommodate everyone. And so even now, a lot of those shops are seemingly raising their prices a bit, and we're only just getting into this. There's so much uncertainty. My thought was, if I did it in my backyard here, nothing can get in the way of that. And I know for certain that my product is being made here in the US, and I don't have to worry about what's happening globally.
So how does it pencil? Because most people that I hear talk about this are like, oh, you can't do it in the United States. Nobody wants those jobs. Wages aren't there. And then the next piece will be, oh, and we don't have the infrastructure.
Right.
We don't have the natural resources like China does. Let's just go somewhere else. And then you decide, also, I'm going to put it in California, which, California, New York, Massachusetts have the worst from an employer perspective,
Yep.
labor laws. They've got regulatory and compliance laws on businesses. They're just burdensome. In my mind, it doesn't pencil. How does it pencil in your mind?
Let's go through each of these. So first thing, regulatory stuff. Silicone is super clean and safe. That's great. There's like the waste is very minimal, if any. It can get ground up and reused. So that's good.
Okay.
Energy also, the efficiency of these machines. I mean, yeah, they're 54 kilowatt hour energy cost, but where I'm looking at putting this is in Riverside County in California. So the energy is abundant when you factor in solar, and it's reliable energy, and the space is cheaper than, I'm not putting in Orange County. So the space is a bit cheaper. Getting into
Sure.
labor, let's do some quick math on napkin math on how this works. So a machine producing my product, it has a mold, which is like a big waffle maker, and that mold can have any number of cavities that can fit within the space of the plate of that press. So in my case, for the Tenikle item, it's a 6-cavity mold. So I know for every run that it does, it's going to produce 6 tentacles. The cycle time of this is about 60 seconds. So one machine operator working at one of these machines every 60 seconds is pumping out 6 tentacles. So in an hour, they're making 360 units in a single hour. If I pay them really well, let's say $36 an hour for simple math, that's 10 cents per unit in labor cost, breaking down from $36 an hour divided by 360 units per hour, that's only 10 cents in labor cost per unit. So the math on labor, like you said earlier, people don't go to China anymore because of cheap labor. In some cases, if it's sewing or things like that, yeah. But for an item like this, that's much more automated, it pencils out just on the labor. And then what's even better is the machines that I'm getting have a center console, and there's actually that runs 2 side by side, and they cycle every 60 seconds alternatively. So every 30 seconds, the single machine operator is actually working 2 machines. So I can get 12 units.
Where does the unit economics get down to? So you were saying it started at 6, it went down to 4. Where do you think it'll be in California?
So my $465 is my landed cost. It's actually $344 from the factory if I didn't have to freight it. So my factory overseas charges me $344, and then with freight and tariffs and customs and all of trucking, getting it to the warehouse, everything brings it up another $1.20 ish. And that's the tariffs prior to the jump. So that was our 2024 tariffs. So just imagine now I'm paying $11 a unit just to get it here, which doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter. So the raw materials cost for my product, it's 3.7 ounces of silicone. Silicone costs about $4 to $6 on the high end per pound, dollars per pound. So 3.7 ounces, I'm looking at about $1.20-ish is about the range. And that also includes the steel metal that's inside. So I'll have to stamp the steel, put that in there, overmold the steel with the silicone.
I'm like the guy in the GIF right now who's like confused and he just sees math numbers
Yeah.
floating around his face?
I am too.
I'm like,
pretending
okay.
like I know it all. No,
You could literally say anything right now, and I'd be like,
I'm like doing the math in my.
You win.
I'm not even doing the math in my head. I wrote it down for something else, and I just remember it, kind of. So if my math is incorrect,
you have efficiently proven that you're an expert. So I believe whatever number you say to me right now, I'm going to believe is your fully loaded cost. So where do you get to?
So we'll get to about $3.15 is what I mathed it out to. $3.15. That's with packaging.
Wow.
And because I don't have to freight anything, that's it. So then you have to factor in margin for the factory, because what the factory was charging me was $3.44. They were making the margin on that. So clearly they're making it cheaper than I am here. Most of that really comes down to the raw materials itself, because China actually subsidizes their silicone, so they can get silicone for cheaper, almost half of the price here. But still, you factor in all the freight and all that stuff, it kind of evens out somewhere down the line.
Kind of washes out.
So it just makes sense for me to do this here. And if let's say I charge a 30% margin to my products from the factory, 30% is decent. I think the average in fact in manufacturing is around 20% is what I've heard. So 30% gets me to that, essentially the same landed cost that I was paying previous. Yeah.
So, okay, here's my question for you. I think that there are 5 words that get you into entrepreneurship and get you into a lot of trouble, but you wouldn't have done anything if you hadn't said these words to yourself. But the 5 words are, how hard could it be?
It's going to be hard. I will admit that.
And like, well, no, listen to me, where it's like, no, I've penciled it out. And let me just make sure that's all 5. How hard could it be? Cool, 5. All right.
Okay.
You're like, no, I penciled it out. Yeah, it's there, but you've never done it before. Do you know what I mean?
100%.
And then everybody, they'll get into it and they're like 5 years in and they're like, if I knew everything I knew now, there's no way in heck I would have freaking done this.
Same exact story with the Tenikle business. Yes, I was so naive going into it, but now look, 12.6 million a year business or whatever.
That's where I'm saying is like, you have some experience, so you know that that's like a reality of entrepreneurship. My question to you is, how are you getting up to speed? Like, are you contracting with people in China who have built out these manufacturing facilities that understand what it takes? Or are you just like, Googling and ChatGPT? Because I'm assuming that. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. So initially, my first dive into this was, number one, looking at what my factory was doing and seeing the videos that they sent over of like, okay, what are they actually doing to make my product? And then going on a deep dive on YouTube. And I would actually like translate it into Chinese, what I was looking for, compression molding, silicone kitchenware goods. And then I would do it in Chinese. And then I would go to I would type it all out in Chinese in YouTube, and because it was translated. And then I would get more direct stuff from factories in China showing their processes and that stuff.
Oh, dang. You went deep.
A bit of a rabbit hole. And then ChatGPT is certainly helpful. And then people are incredibly helpful. You spoke about Dan Thompson that was on your podcast. I had a lovely conversation with him after hearing your podcast, and he was incredibly helpful on some, things to watch out for, things to think about, that sort of thing, and technical stuff as well. He actually, one of the cool things that he told me, some of their most efficient machines are like 100 years old and they just crank and they never break down. I thought that was pretty cool. That's a cool thing to share. Yeah, there's a bit of research. And then other folks, just yesterday, I spoke with someone for a while, and he's also starting a factory in Mexico. So he's doing the Mexico route, and he's been in the space for a long time. We chatted for a while. Yeah, it's just people are really supportive of the idea, and people are coming out to share what their learnings, and it, that's a cool thing about starting any business. As long as you're telling people what you do, people want to help, and that's been really, really cool.
It's really interesting with some of the old technology, like you said. First of all, it makes me really happy to hear that you listened to a podcast that I did with Dan and then got connected with Dan, and now you've got $10-20 million of like potential commitments to the factory that you're launching, which is incredible. Actually, you were at this dinner with me. I heard this guy explain qubits because we were talking about quantum computing.
My brain was breaking. I was trying to keep up, but
dude, my brain was done. My brain was absolutely fried. He's freaking so smart. But one of the things he was talking about with quantum computing is in order for us to get 1 qubit worth of power, we essentially have to have like 500 qubits or something ridiculous. It's like some crazy number. And it's worked its way down over time. And I don't know all the technical stuff. And some nerd is listening to this. They're like, well, technically it's not qubits to power. It's qubits that give, like, I don't know. But that's just what he told me. Okay, I'm repeating it. And so I asked him about traditional computing, bits, not qubits, but bits. And I was like, okay, what's the ratio there? Because I get it several hundred qubits to get 1 qubit of processing power. How many hundreds of bits does it take to get 1 bit of processing power? And he was like, it's almost 1 to 1. I was like, oh, really? He's like, well, we've just had it for so long and we've gotten so efficient with it. We know we've done all the shortcuts. We've optimized it as much as we can. It's like almost 1 to 1. And so when you say that there's a 100-year-old machine that Dan has that's like his most productive, it kind of makes sense, right? It's like it's been around the longest. So we've had the most time to optimize that machine. Whereas these new machines, we just haven't had as much time.
And his whole thing about it was there's just too much tech in these new machines. And when they break, I mean, it's like working on an old car. I've always had
I was just going to say that
dumb old classic car that right now it's a classic Mini Cooper. And I love tinkering on them because it's fun to work on cars, but you can't work on new cars. They're just too darn complicated. And same goes with machinery. And that's kind of part of our plan is actually buying used machinery. A bunch of the machinery that I sourced is a lot cheaper and it's a lot older, but it just does the job. And that's kind of the important thing. Again, back to why is manufacturing in the US so expensive? I think a lot of it comes down to like the capital expense going into it. Like maybe just try to be more frugal in the capital expense going into it and just get what works and don't go for the ultimate.
I think we're going to see some really cool stuff. I mean, the old saying, necessity is the mother of invention. And you've got all these companies like yours who are like, oh, well, tariffs are here. I got to figure this out. I think it's what I would call the upside of the downside. It's one of my favorite sayings. It's like of anything that's good, there's a downside, right? So it's like, oh, this is the downside of the upside.
Yep.
And for anything that's bad, there can be an upside. So it's like, oh, this is the upside of the downside.
Yep.
I don't know why. I just love that saying. And I think this is gonna be a forcing function for people to figure out.
I think so too.
How to do it.
Yeah.
Probably domestically. That's the upside of the downside.
And it may not be 100%, 1-for-1 cost difference from overseas. That's our goal, is to get it to the same cost and have additional benefits. You don't have to freight it for 45 days. It takes 10 days to get from our shop to your warehouse, then 45 days. Just think of like, how much cash outlay that is in your cash conversion cycle that's stuck on wire.
Your whole inventory, like your working capital is just tied up in inventory.
Exactly. I think that there's a lot more benefits to producing here in the US. And I think that wages, as long as it's not super labor intensive, you can keep decently high, great livable wages for folks on the floor producing stuff here in the US and still be competitive with overseas pricing. I think it's just going to be some technical stuff we're going to have to hurdle. Yeah.
For entrepreneurs who are freaking out right now, they have an e-commerce business or they sell a product and they're like, how am I going to survive with these tariffs? I got to onshore this, or I got to nearshore it, or I got to blah, blah, blah. How can they find you? Where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, on X, it's Hansdos_does, Hansdos does. And LinkedIn, just Hans Dos. It's DOSE, like medicine. Happy to help. If you are looking at onshoring, obviously, if it's any thermoplastics or silicone, things like that, let's talk. But even just finding other facilities, my network has grown quite a bit since I've been working through this, and even nearshoring in Mexico as well. I'm kind of swinging a big swing here. In some ways, it's a Hail Mary for the Tenikle business because I just have to do something. And so I'm taking a big leap of faith, and there's certainly a need for it. But I'm happy to help anyone who needs to reshore, do that. Or if anyone wants to get involved in the American manufacturing renaissance, we need help. We need money too. If anyone wants to.
Well, rooting for you, Hans.
Thank you.
It's awesome.
Thanks, Nick.
We'll talk soon.
Good hanging out. Bye.
All right. Hopefully you liked that episode. And if you've made it this far, you're either really committed or you're stuck doing yard work and you can't actually skip on your phone. So while I have you, the show is growing, but I have a favor to ask of you. Will you please help me grow the show? I want to reach more people. There's a couple things that you can do. Like and subscribe is the simplest thing. Obviously, you want to get notifications for when the next episode is coming out. But if you go the next step, will you leave me a review? 5-star on Spotify or Apple. What that does is it tells the algorithm that, oh, hey, this is a high value podcast because more people are leaving reviews for it, and it then pushes it out to more people. So that's why when people are like, will you like and subscribe and put a 5-star rating? It's not just to make themselves feel better. It's actually to get more exposure for the show. So if you do that for me, I would greatly appreciate it. And I'll see you next time.